Boston, 1945. Beatrice Bea Karagulian was a 22-year-old white woman from a wealthy Armenian-American family. Malcolm Little was a 19-year-old black hustler from Harlem. They met at a jazz club, they fell in love, and together they created the most dangerous burglary operation Boston had ever seen. For 8 months, they were unstoppable. 23 burglaries, over $200,000 stolen, equivalent to $3 million today. But their relationship broke every rule. Interracial romance in 1945 Massachusetts was illegal, dangerous, and scandalous. When they were finally caught in February 1946, the judge didn't just sentence them for burglary. He sentenced them for moral degeneracy. Malcolm got 10 years. Bea got 5 years. They never saw each other again. Bea changed her name, married, had a daughter, and took the secret to her grave in 2006. But her daughter found a box of letters Malcolm had written to Bea from prison. Letters that revealed the truth. Malcolm X's first love wasn't black nationalism. It was a white woman who taught him how to rob the rich. Today, 60 years later, Bea's daughter breaks her silence. Do you think it was his white girlfriend or his journey to Mecca that completely changed Malcolm X? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more. June 18, 1944. The Roseland Ballroom, Boston. Malcolm Little, just 19, worked as a shoeshine boy at the ballroom. But his real job was selling marijuana to white customers who came to hear the big bands. That night, a young white woman approached his stand. Dark hair, olive skin, confident smile. "I need my shoes shine," she said. Malcolm looked up. "You came to a jazz club in heels that already shine. You don't need a shoe shine, miss." She laughed. "You're observant. I'm B, short for Beatrice. They call me Detroit Red." That 3-minute conversation would change both their lives forever. Beatrice Karagulian came from money. Her father owned a textile import business in Boston's North End. Armenian-American, wealthy, respectable. But Bea hated her privileged world. She hated the arranged marriage her father was planning. She loved jazz, black culture, and danger. Malcolm Little was all three. "My mother told me she was drawn to my future father because he represented everything forbidden," says Margaret Reynolds, Bea's daughter, who is now 68. "He was black, he was poor, he was dangerous, and he was brilliant." Over 3 weeks, Malcolm and Bea met secretly. They talked for hours about books, politics, racism, and class. "My mother said he was the first man who treated her like she had a brain," Margaret recalls. "Not just a pretty face." But Malcolm was also calculating. He saw opportunity in Bea's access to wealthy Boston society. On July 24, 1944, Malcolm proposed something that would bind them in crime. "You know these rich families? You go to their parties. What if we rob them?" Bea's response shocked him. "I've been waiting for you to ask." Together they would create the most sophisticated burglary ring Boston had ever seen. August 1944. Their first target, the Thornton family estate in Brookline. Bea had met Mrs. Thornton at a charity event. The woman bragged about her jewelry collection, silverware, rare coins, and mentioned they'd be in Martha's Vineyard for 2 weeks. The operation was brilliant. Bea's role: attend society parties, befriend wealthy women, gather intelligence on valuables and schedules, provide floor plans and entry points. Malcolm's role: the Thornton burglary netted $8,000, equivalent to $135,000 today. Over 18 months, they hit 23 homes across Boston's wealthiest neighborhoods: Brookline, Newton, Wellesley, Beacon Hill. "My mother kept detailed notes," Margaret reveals, showing notebooks her mother left behind. Floor plans, valuables lists, vacation schedules. This wasn't just crime, it was art to her. Their patterns: avoid homes with dogs or live-in staff. Strike during vacations, never the same neighborhood twice in a month. "My mother said Malcolm treated her as an equal partner," Margaret says. In that era, even in crime, women were usually just accomplices, but Malcolm respected her intelligence. The relationship deepened. They became lovers and rented a small apartment in Roxbury under fake names, illegal in 1945 Boston, where interracial cohabitation was criminal. They couldn't be together in public, Margaret explains. Walking down the street holding hands meant arrest, so they created a secret world where color didn't matter. Malcolm later wrote about a white woman he was involved with, though he never named her, but his autobiography left out the crucial detail. She wasn't just his lover. She was his criminal partner, his equal. "My mother taught him how rich white people thought," Margaret says. "How they saw the world, protected their money, looked down on everyone else. She gave him an education in white privilege he used for the rest of his life." But by December 1945, their operation was falling apart. Malcolm's partner Shorty Jarvis had fallen in love with Bea's sister. When that relationship ended badly, Shorty made a decision that would destroy everything. He went to the police to make a deal. He would give them Malcolm and Bea in exchange for immunity. The betrayal was already in motion. January 12, 1946. Malcolm noticed police cars circling their Roxbury apartment. Not stopping, just watching. "We need to stop," Malcolm told Bea. "Something's wrong." But Bea had one more target, the biggest yet. The Morrison family. "They're going to Palm Beach for 3 weeks. This is the score that sets us up for life. Then we disappear." He agreed, the worst decision of his life. On February 11, 1946, Malcolm and his crew broke into the Morrison estate in Newton. Bea was the lookout, parked half a block away. But the family wasn't in Palm Beach. They were home, and they had been tipped off by Shorty Jarvis. "The police didn't arrest them immediately," Margaret says. "They waited. They wanted to catch them in the act." When Malcolm entered the house, lights flooded on. Police surrounded the building. He was caught with stolen coins. No escape. Outside, Bea saw the police lights. She could have driven away, but she didn't. She got out of the car and walked toward the house. "What are you doing?" her sister screamed. "I'm not letting him go down alone," Bea said. She walked straight to police. "I'm part of this. Arrest me too." "My mother always said that was when she proved she truly loved him," Margaret says with tears. She could have run, but she stood by him, even knowing what would happen. The trial wasn't just about burglary. The prosecutor didn't focus on $200,000 in stolen goods. He focused on the fact that a white woman and black man had been living together as lovers. "This is not merely theft," the prosecutor told the jury. "This is moral degeneracy of a white woman who debased herself with a Negro criminal." The verdict was decided before it began. Malcolm and Bea stood trial together. Technically for burglary, but everyone knew the real crime: miscegenation, interracial romance. District Attorney Robert Bradford made this explicit. Miss Karagulian, a young woman from a respectable family, chose to degrade herself by forming an illicit relationship with this Negro criminal. This is what happens when the natural boundaries between races are violated. Bea's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. The evidence was overwhelming. They didn't deny the crimes, but the sentencing revealed the trial's true nature. Shorty Jarvis, same number of burglaries. 18 months. Bea's sister, lookout on several jobs. Probation: Malcolm Little, 10 years. Beatrice Karagulian, 5 years. The disparity wasn't about involvement. Bea planned the robberies, but Malcolm got twice her sentence. The judge said it explicitly, Margaret recalls. "To Malcolm, you are being sentenced not just for burglary, but for your moral corruption of a white woman. To my mother, you are being sentenced for debasing yourself with a Negro." As they were led away in handcuffs, Malcolm and Bea locked eyes. Bea mouthed, "I love you." Malcolm nodded. Then he was gone. They would never see each other again. In prison, Malcolm began transforming into Malcolm X. He found religion, educated himself, became the voice of black nationalism. But Bea's transformation went the opposite direction. She emerged broken, ashamed, determined to erase Malcolm from her life. She changed her name, married a white man who never knew her past, and buried the letters Malcolm sent from prison, letters that revealed a side of Malcolm X the world never saw. Between 1946 and 1952, Malcolm sent 47 letters to Beatrice. She received all of them. She kept all of them. But she never responded. "My mother couldn't respond," Margaret says. "Prison officials read all mail. If she had written back, her new life would have been exposed. So she stayed silent. But she kept every letter." Margaret found them in 2006, days after her mother died, hidden in a locked box in Bea's closet. "When I saw Malcolm X's signature on letter after letter, I thought I was hallucinating," Margaret recalls. "My mother had never mentioned him." The letters reveal a Malcolm history books don't show. A young man in love, in pain, slowly transforming. Letter Num 1, April 10, 1946. "Dear B, this place is hell, not because of the conditions, because you're not here. I keep thinking about our apartment in Roxbury. The nights we stayed up talking, were they all just dreams? I don't blame you. I blame myself. But if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change meeting you. You were the first person who saw me as more than just a street hustler. Love, Malcolm." Letter Num 1, 12, November 1946. "Dear B, my brother told me about Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. He says the white man is the devil. When he said this, I thought of you. Because you're white, but you're not a devil. You're the person who understood me better than anyone. How do I reconcile this? I don't have an answer yet. Malcolm." Letter Num 123. "Dear B, I haven't heard from you in 2 years. I understand why. I've changed my name to Malcolm X. I don't write expecting a response anymore. I write because I need you to know. What we had was real, but it was impossible. Not because we didn't love each other, because the world wouldn't let us. I'm going to dedicate my life to changing that world, so that someday, a black man and white woman can love each other without being sent to prison for it. Thank you for helping me find my purpose. Goodbye, B. Malcolm X. That was the last letter. He had finally let her go. But B's story didn't end there. In 1952, she was released. She changed her name to Betty Morrison, taking the last name of the family they had robbed. She married a white businessman, had a daughter, Margaret. For 54 years, B lived as a respectable housewife. She went to church, baked cookies, volunteered at the library, and never mentioned Malcolm X until 2005, when she saw something on television that broke her decades of silence. February 21, 2005, the 40th anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination. Bea Morrison, formerly Beatrice, 82 years old, sat watching a PBS documentary about Malcolm X. When Malcolm's face appeared on screen, Bea began to cry. "Mom, what's wrong?" her daughter Margaret asked. Bea looked at her and said, "I knew him, before he was Malcolm X, when he was just Malcolm, and I loved him." Margaret was stunned. "What?" For the first time in 54 years, Bea told the truth. "I was his girlfriend and his crime partner. We robbed houses together. We went to prison together. And I never saw him again after the trial. But I've thought about him every single day for 60 years. Margaret couldn't process it. Her quiet mother, a criminal? In love with Malcolm X? "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed," Bea said. "Not of loving him, but of abandoning him. When he went to prison, he wrote me letters. Beautiful letters. And I never wrote back. I was a coward. I chose the easy path. Malcolm chose the hard path, becoming who he really was, fighting for what he believed, dying for it. He was brave. I wasn't." Over the next year, Bea told Margaret everything. The burglaries, the trial, the letters, the transformation of both their lives. "My mother watched Malcolm become famous and felt both pride and guilt," Margaret recalls. Bea considered going public but ultimately couldn't. She thought it might damage Malcolm's legacy. Margaret explains. "If people knew Malcolm X was in love with a white woman, committed crimes with her, it might undermine his message about black nationalism." Bea died in March 2006. The secret died with her, except for the letters. When Margaret found the letters, she faced an impossible decision: destroy them to protect her mother's memory, or reveal them to set the historical record straight. For 18 years, Margaret kept them hidden. But in 2024, she finally decided, the world deserves to know the complete truth about Malcolm X, not a sanitized version, the full, complicated human truth. Because Malcolm himself always said, "I'm for truth no matter who tells it." March 15, 2024, Margaret Reynolds, 68, sits in a New York television studio for her first interview. "I struggled with this decision for 18 years, she says. "Should I burn these? Donate them anonymously? Publish them?" Margaret consulted historians and Malcolm X scholars. Responses were mixed. Some said, "These letters are historically important. They show a side of Malcolm that complicates our understanding." Others said, "Publishing these could undermine his legacy." Critics might say, "He was a hypocrite. He preached black nationalism but loved a white woman." Margaret understood both perspectives, but ultimately, Malcolm himself would have wanted the truth told. Malcolm spent his life evolving, questioning, revising his beliefs. Margaret explains, "He admitted when he was wrong. He wasn't afraid of complexity. Hiding this part of his story would dishonor him." The letters were authenticated by experts and donated to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem. "My mother was white. Malcolm was black. In 1945, that made them criminals just for loving each other," Margaret says. "But my mother wasn't a villain in Malcolm's story. They were two young people who found each other in a world that punished them for it." The revelation sparked intense debate among scholars. Some embrace it. This humanizes Malcolm. It shows his capacity for love across racial lines, something he advocated after Mecca. Others are skeptical. This creates cognitive dissonance with his Nation of Islam teachings. Margaret's response: Malcolm contained multitudes. Partnership with a white woman in 1945, advocacy for black separatism in 1955, and after Mecca in 1964, preaching racial unity. The letters don't contradict his evolution. They're part of it. The most shocking revelation came in letter 19, January 1947, which Margaret almost didn't include. Malcolm wrote, "B.A., I've been thinking about why I'm so angry at white people. I realized I'm not angry because whites are evil by nature. I'm angry because the system they created punishes love and rewards hatred. A system that sends us to prison for loving each other needs to be destroyed, not because white people are devils, but because white supremacy turns good people into devils. This letter, written 17 years before Mecca, shows Malcolm was already questioning the nation's racial theology. The seeds of his final evolution were planted in prison, watered by his love for a white woman named B.A. The letters from Malcolm to B.A. don't diminish his legacy, they deepen it. They show Malcolm X's journey wasn't a straight line. It was complex evolution shaped by love, loss, imprisonment, religion, and constant self-examination. What we learn: 1. Malcolm's capacity for love across racial lines existed long before Mecca. His 1964 transformation wasn't sudden. It was a return to something he'd experienced in 1945. 2. His anger at white supremacy was personal. He had loved a white woman. They were sent to prison for that love. 3. His evolution wasn't betrayal, it was completion. Young Malcolm 1945, the cross-racial lines. Nation Malcolm 1952-64. Post-Mecca Malcolm 1964-65. Post-Mecca Malcolm 1964-65. Post-Mecca Malcolm 1964-6 Police. Buzz a platers post of the wall lies, but from Bullfork and a mine. Wolf can be transformative and tragic. Malcolm and B's relationship taught him the problem wasn't race, it was racism. Today, Margaret advocates for nuanced understanding of Malcolm X. My mother used to say, Malcolm taught me that intelligence and kindness aren't determined by skin color. I taught him that white people aren't devils, white supremacy is. They educated each other. Then the world pulled them apart. The letters are now studied in universities as primary sources. They don't replace the autobiography. They supplement it. Malcolm X was many things: hustler, burglar, prisoner, minister, revolutionary, martyr. But before all that, he was a 19-year-old who fell in love with someone the world said he shouldn't love. And that love taught him a lesson he spent his life articulating. The problem isn't who we are. The problem is the system that punishes us for being who we are. They were sent to prison, not just for burglary, but for crossing racial lines. Today, interracial relationships are legal. But are they truly accepted? Malcolm and B's story ended in separation and silence. But maybe we can learn from it. Maybe we can build a world where love doesn't require courage just because it crosses color lines. What do you think? Write your thoughts in the comments.